Hello, everybody. So, in yesterday's session, we discussed Java identifiers concept, and we also have seen example programs for practice. Okay, these two things we looked into. So, in today, let's see reserved words in Java. Okay, so basically, in Java, some of the words are for reserved with a specific meaning or functionality. Okay, so what does this mean? Basically, here there are some of the words which has been reserved, like you go to a restaurant and some of the tables are reserved, right? In those tables you cannot sit on those tables. You have to choose the other tables. So similarly, these words you cannot choose for identifiers, right? We discussed that yesterday, that identifiers be created with the help of reserved words. Why? Because reserved words are reserved, they already have a specific meaning, or they already have a specific functionality. Okay, so now let's see. So in Java we have total 56 reserved words. Okay, out of these 56 we have 53 reserved keywords and 3 reserved literals. Okay, so basically, reserved keywords will have some meaning, it will have a kind of a functionality to do, and literals are just like constants. For example, they are default values. So we'll talk about like true, false, and null. Okay, so basically reserved literals are true, false, and null. So here you see the true, false, and null, they are not performing any action here, but they are the default values that JVM will return, or you will be using as a default value for a boolean type of data type, or when the object reference is not having anything, you can assign it null. Okay, now here let's see one by one all the 56 reserved words. Okay, byte. So first byte, short, int, long, float, double, boolean, cache. Okay, here observe something, that the reserved words, each reserved words are starting with small characters. Okay, so you will not be using, you cannot write capital boolean, like I mean to say, if you write boolean or you write short, this is not same as these reserved words. Okay, so it has to start with small characters itself. Okay, then it comes, we will say if, else, switch, case, default, while, do, for, break. Okay, continue, return. So how many are on the top? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. These are 8. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, this is while. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Next, we will have public, private, protected, static, final, abstract. Okay, so here synchronized, then we have native, strict, FP, transient, volatile. Okay, so it's synchronized. If you will write synchronize and you will remove the D, it will not become a reserved keyword. Okay, so these things you have to keep in mind, that it will always be with small character, small case character, because as we have discussed in last session, that Java in itself is a case sensitive language. So the meaning changes as you change the uppercase and lowercase. Okay, so public, private, protected, static, final 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, this becomes again 11. Then we will say try, catch, finally, throw, throws, assert. Okay, again these are 6 reserved keywords. Then we will have class, interface, extends, implements, package, import. Okay, these are again 6. Then we will have new, instance of, super, this will have 4. Then we have void, just 1, go to, const, which are 2, true, false, 3, again 2, sorry. Then we have default, then we have null, enum. So here I've tried to categorize it in a way that they belong to a specific group. Okay, so class, interface, extends, implement, these we use for class and interfaces, these we use for exception handling, so I've tried to consolidate it so it's easier for you to learn. Okay, as we will go further and understand what are these things, but I have categorized it in a way you can note it down and then you can learn it accordingly. Okay, then we have sealed and permits too. Okay, so these are all the 56 reserved keywords. Reserved words are there, out of which 53 are reserved keywords and 3 are reserved literals, which are, you can say, true, false, and null. These 3 are reserved literals, rest all are reserved keywords. So you have to keep those in mind. You don't have to learn it, because as you will proceed further and these will be in your daily use. Okay, so whether you are doing Java coding directly for development or you are doing it for automation testing in Selenium, you will be used to these. You don't need to learn it. Okay, but yes, have a look and try to keep it in mind that okay, these are my reserved words in Java. Okay, so next we are going to do an introduction for data types. Okay, we are going to see what are data types and how in Java, what does these mean. Okay, so data type is basically, you can say, every, just a second, we can say every variable or expression in Java has some type and it is checked by compiler for type compatibility. Okay, so every variable or expression in Java has some type. When we say that compiler will check it, so this is, what does this make Java? It makes Java a strongly typed programming language. Okay, the worth of the importance of data type and the type of value, and whether the variable is having the right kind of value, these things will be checked by compiler. And this is so important that it is like a mandatory thing in Java. So that's why it makes Java a strongly typed programming language. You can take an example. For example, I say int x equal to 10, char b equal to uh, okay. So here you see this x is the variable. Okay. This is the type. I have discussed this in last session as well, right? That this is the variable name, that is identifier. This is the type of the value this variable will contain. And this is the 10 is the value that it contains. So x is the name. Int is the type, the data type that we are discussing. This is int, means x can have integer type of values, and also there is a specific size that only maximum this size of value integer can accommodate. Okay. And 10 is the constant that we are keeping it. So 10 is a value in the memory. It is being represented by x. Okay. And that box in the memory which where 10 is there, that is of type int. Now, here one thing is important, whether x is having the integer value or not, whether x is having a value which is increasing the maximum limit of integer, whether the right kind of values and right kind of rules are being followed while writing the expression regarding the data types, these things will be checked by compiler. For example, here when I say char b equal to c, so here b is the identifier, the variable name, char is the type, it can hold only character type of value, and c is the value. So here compiler will check, okay, what is the type of variable? It is character, and the type is always written just before the identifier. So here if it is variable name, identifier will be identifier, then type will be char. Okay. Similarly, if we are talking about method, the name of method is vehicle. Okay, we use parenthesis. Here the parameters can be mentioned. Just before that, where we have mentioned the name, the return type will be mentioned. Return type means here the type will be used that, okay, this method will perform the actions which are mentioned inside it. Okay, for example, there are 10 steps. 10 steps of action is mentioned inside this method. Then it is going to return what type of value? String type, character type, integer type, boolean type, whatever. And also, if it is not going to return, then we have to mention void. Means it is not going to return, but mentioning the return type is mandatory for a method. Similarly, for variables, you have to mention, you cannot just say b equal to c. You have to say what kind of values b can hold. Okay, so that is what is data type, and that makes Java a strongly typed programming language. Okay, now there are something important you need to keep in mind. Usually in interviews you are get asked these things, that Java is not pure object oriented programming language. Okay, so Java is a programming language which is object oriented, but not pure. Why? Because some of the OOPS concepts, okay, like we can say operator, overloading, multiple inheritance, with class, etc. Okay, these are not being supported by Java. That's why we say it's not a pure object oriented language. And there is one more thing, that moreover we are using primitive data types Okay, what are primitive data types that we are currently discussing? Okay, this char, int, boolean, those are not objects. Okay, so basically if something is pure object oriented language, means everything is an object for that programming language. But here you see the primitive data types which we are using, which I will discuss later, currently, like further, that what are all types and all the length and everything. Those types, char, boolean, int, float, these things, these are not objects. Okay, but we deal with that in Java programming language. That's why we are saying that Java is not pure object oriented language. Plus, there are some of the oops concept like operator overloading, multiple inheritance with class. These are also not supported by Java. So that's why we are saying it's not a pure object oriented language. Now, let's do a small, a small discussion over the introduction of the data types, that how many data types are there. So primitive data types in Java are 8. Okay. Numeric data types and non-numeric. So numeric data types are how many? So numeric data type again will have a bifurcation as integral and floating point. Okay. Integral data types like byte, short, int, long. These are integral data types, means they are related to integers. But if we say floating point data types, then are float, double. Okay. And if we say non-numeric data types, then non-numeric data types are char and boolean. Okay. So total you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 primitive data types in Java. Numeric and non-numeric. Under numeric data types, there are two bifurcations, integral and floating point. Integral data types are byte, short, int, and long. And floating data types are float and double. Okay. Basically, when I say floating point data types, I'm talking about decimal values. Okay, like 4.66, 12.5. But when I say integral, I'm saying 4, 5, 6, 12, 132, like that. Okay. Non-numeric data types, char and boolean. Okay. So don't worry about that. Don't try to go into detail in this session. We are just doing an introduction that, okay, about the data types here. So there are 8 data types, and every time compiler is going to check the variable for type compatibility. Okay. And otherwise, if the type is not correct, it is going to give you a compile time error. Now, you see here, except non-numeric, okay, data types, all other data type are signed data types. Okay. When I say signed, it means it will have positive and negative sign. Okay. So both the values, if we are saying if we are saying example +5 or just 5, but then -5 also exists. Okay. So for all except char and boolean, rest for everything, you will have both positive and negative values. Okay. So those are signed data types in Java. But non-numeric data types, char and boolean, are unsigned data types in Java. So let's do a quick summary of what we discussed today. We discussed reserved words. There are 56 reserved words in Java. They have a specific meaning and functionality already described inside the Java language. We cannot change it and we cannot use it in our program as an identifiers, okay, as a class name or variable name or method name. If we do that, we will get error, compile time error. So out of that, 3 will be reserved literals and 53 are reserved keywords. Okay, and I have mentioned all the reserved keywords here and the literals. 3 literals will be true, false, and null. Okay. Then comes the data types. Here, every variable or expression in Java has some type. It will be checked by compiler for type compatibility, means whether the variable is holding or the method is returning the correct type of value which you have decided, or the variable is holding the correct value which you have mentioned before the name of the variable. So these things will be checked by compiler every time, and that's why Java is a strongly typed programming language. Then we discussed why Java is not pure object oriented language, because we are using primitive data types and primitive data types are not objects. Plus, it does not hold or has the concepts like operator overloading and multiple inheritance, etc. inside Java. Java does not support it. So that's why we cannot say it's a pure object oriented language. Okay, these things which I'm mentioning or discussing here, you need to understand this also, and you need to keep that like on your tip of your tongue as well, because many of the interviews these gets asked many times. Okay, so primitive data types we have 8. Integral and non-integral. Integral will be byte, short, int, long. Non-integral will be float and double. And non-numeric data types will be char and boolean. So total 8 we have. Now except char and boolean, rest the integral and non-integral data types will be signed types. Okay, they have both positive and negative value. So in the next session, we are going to discuss further in the detail each data type, and we'll also see programs related to that and how they work and function. Thank you.